Seems like every week there's another 2D side-scrolling combat-heavy Metroidvania from an indie developer. While there are a few standouts like Hollow Knight, 9 Lives, and the Salt and Sanctuary series, many just blend into a long list you won't play until they are free. However, I think if you were to ignore Ender Magnolia, you would truly be missing out on one hell of a gem. Developed by Binary Haze, Ender Magnolia, the sequel to 2021's Ender Lilies, improves on its predecessor's formula in nearly every way. In fact, the only time it stumbles may be in trying too hard to advance itself. This leads to a handful of unbalanced bosses that had me struggling for a good hour, to a few hidden loots that had my fingers playing Twister on my controller, and a little bit of ability bloat without enough depth in your build to make it viable. In all of my 25+ hour time with the game, it was pure bliss. Ender Magnolia takes place in the Land of Fumes, a beautifully art-directed place with a great atmosphere and music, filled with some interesting friends and a diverse collection of enemies. For anyone who has played the last game, you step into a new protagonist, Lilac, a battle-ready attuner who, well, tunes corrupted bosses to unlock new abilities and upgrades. This loop of exploration, unlocking areas, battling bosses is the heart of the game. Overall, I feel like they went a bit overboard with the amount of abilities. I found that I had mostly settled in on my top 6 to 8 midway through, only swapping them out occasionally for certain bosses and challenges. In my case, I settled into the Sith as my primary weapon, which let me swing wide attacks, a flying bird who continually pressured enemies with an automatic offense, an OP punch, spin, or ice attack, and a ranged gun attack. Many of the abilities are unique and interesting, though for me, a few fell flat. One area that really fell flat was the game's block parry mechanic, where I just couldn't get the timing right. I spent most of my time dodging around, trying to get good hits in. When it comes to your main equipment, you have 4 you can put on, available to buy or find as you explore. For the most part, I just kept putting on the strongest one, or the best stat gain, or the one that gave me additional heals. Here's where I feel the game probably could have done a better job with depth. It'd be great to have additional build types and options to complement the more unique and maybe less useful abilities. The real star of your build is relics. The first game, Ender Lilies, had a lot of variety relics and had some really unique features, and Ender Magnolia keeps going with this concept. They can provide defense based on your HP, improved attack based on how you attack in the air, on the ground, or in water, help you collect more experience materials, fill up your special attack meter faster, or provide a variety of utility, everything from health to jumping high. There's a lot of them, and you keep collecting them as you play through, but I don't think I used half of them. How many you can wear is based on how many relic slots they take up, slots you can unlock by finding or buying additional space. This led to plenty of situational swap strategies in the harder zones and bosses, where I was switching out different types of relics to try to give myself a little bit of an edge. Land of Fumes is broken into 3 main areas: lower, central, and upper Stratum. But within each area is a variety of interesting locations. This is a vast, interconnected labyrinth of colorful and beautifully crafted caves, castles, factories, flowery fields, underwater locations. Many of the locations are locked until you get late in the game with new abilities or keys, encouraging you to fast travel back to older zones and find new pathways. Sometimes for a piece of loot, sometimes to find an entire new zone you never knew was there. Like the first game, each room changes blue on the map when you find all of its secrets. This encouraged me to keep playing and ultimately make it an easier game to get that 100% completion in your first playthrough. Just make sure not to put on the special late game quest ring that's gifted to you, at least not until you've beaten the game at least once, or you'll miss out on 2 possible endings. Let's talk about bosses. There are a lot. Every zone typically has 1 to 2 mini-bosses, and often these mini-bosses would lead to harder big bosses. Other than the first skill check boss Garm, who unlocks the ability to do a drop attack, most of them were pushovers. I was almost starting to get worried that this would be too easy. Then I reached the central area, and things got a lot more challenging, coming face to face with Gilroy. At this point in the game, you really have to start to favor patience and lean into either parries or quick dodges to survive. The dodge, hit, dodge again, range shot is the playstyle that became my go-to strategy, at least until a little later when some of the bosses began to change their pacing. One in particular, Deck and the Fallen Sorcerer, was a sluggish underwater boss who forces you to swim, dodge underwater methodically. And then Velgrind, a giant robot with a badly sized hitbox and giant swinging arms, seemed impossible to avoid. Each took me well over an hour. I don't think they were necessarily hard, but maybe just not the best design and a very different pace than what you've been used to the entire time. That said, it's a blast to play for anyone who isn't afraid of a bit of challenge. There are difficulty settings if you're struggling. I played through normal and got by just fine. It's not overly punishing as a platform, like some of its other recent entries in the genre have been, and the bosses can occasionally be ruthless, but they are beatable with patience, leading to a very enjoyable, beautifully crafted 2D gem. It does enough to stand out even with its few unbalanced issues, and could have been a little bit more deep in the build system, but this one is worth your time and wallet. And hopefully we see more Ender games in the future. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more of Ender Magnolia, be sure to check out my full playthrough series here on YouTube.